Martin the Warrior by Jacques. Book 1. The Prisoner and the Tyrant. Chapter 1. He was only a young mouse, but of strong build, with a glint in his eye that proclaimed him a born fighter, a creature of few words who never chattered needlessly. The early summer sun of the eastern coast beat down pitilessly on his unprotected head as he carried and stacked chunks of rock beside the masons who would shape it into blocks that would enlarge Fort Marshank. A weasel captain named Hisk swaggered up, cracking his long whip threateningly, looking for an excuse to cut loose on the slaves who toiled in the dusty heat around him. His eyes settled on the young mouse.
"You there! Liven yourself up! Come on! Stir your stumps! Lord Battering will be roused for an inspection soon! Get moving, or you'll taste my whip!"
The mouse dropped the rock he was carrying and stood staring levelly at the bullying weasel. Hisk cracked the lash viciously, the tip flicking the air a fraction from his victim's face. The young mouse did not move, his eyes hooded over as he stood in silent defiance. The weasel captain drew the lash back to strike, but the bold, angry eyes of the young slave seemed to challenge him. Like all bullies, the weasel was a coward at heart. Averting his gaze from the piercing stare, Hisk snapped his whip in the direction of some more timid creatures.
"Come on, you worthless idlers! No work, no food! Move your carcasses! Here comes Lord Battering!"
Flanked by his aides, Gerard the rat and Skalrag the fox, Battering the tyrant strode imperiously onto the site. He waited while two hedgehogs hurriedly built him a makeshift seat from stone blocks. Skalrag swiftly covered it with a velvet cloak. Battering sat, gazing at the work going on around him. The stout lord addressed Hisk.
"Will my fortress be finished before summer is out?"
Hisk waved his coiled whip about at the slaves.
"Lord, if the weather was cooler and we had more creatures—"
Battering moved swiftly in his anger. Seizing a pebble, he hurled it, striking Hisk on the jaw. The weasel captain stood dumbly, blood trickling from his lip as the tyrant berated him.
"Excuses! I don't want to hear complaints or excuses, do you hear me? What I need is a fortress built before autumn!"
Immediately, Hisk got to work, flailing about with the whip as he passed on his master's bad mood.
"Move, you useless lumps! You heard Lord Battering! Marshank must be ready before the season's out! It'll be double the work and half rations from now on! Move!"
An old squirrel was staggering by, bent double under the burden of a large rock. Hisk lashed out at him. The whip curled around the aged creature's footpaws, tripping him as he dropped the rock. The weasel began laying into his victim, striking indiscriminately at the old one's frail body.
"You worthless layabout! I'll strip the miserable hide off you!"
The lash rose and fell as Hisk flogged away at the unprotected creature on the ground.
"I'll teach you a lesson you won't forget!"
Suddenly the whip stopped in mid-swing. It went taut as Hisk pulled on the handle. He tugged at it, but it was yanked backwards. The young mouse had the end of the whip coiled around his paw. Hisk's eyes bulged with temper as he shouted at the intruder.
"Let go my whip, mouse, or I'll gut ya!"
The weasel reached for the dagger at his waist, but he was not fast enough. The mouse hurled himself upon Hisk, wrapping the whiplash round the captain's neck. He heaved hard. Hisk thrashed furiously about in the dust, choking and slobbering as the lash tightened. Gerard blew a hasty alarm on a bone whistle he carried slung about his neck. In a trice, the mouse was set upon by the nearest 6 guards. He disappeared beneath a jumble of ferrets, weasels, and rats as they pounded him mercilessly, stamping upon his paws and breaking his hold on the whip. They continued relentlessly beating him with spear handles, rods, and whips until Battering intervened.
"That's enough! Bring him to me.
His paws pinioned by whips and a spear handle pulled hard against his throat. The young mouse was dragged struggling and kicking into the stout lord's presence. Battering drew his sword and pressed the point against the young one's heaving chest. Leaning forward, he hissed into the captive's face.
You know, the penalty is death for attacking one of my horde. I could run you through with my sword right now and snuff out your life. What do you say to that, mouse?
The strong young mouse's eyes burned into the tyrant's face like twin flames as he gritted out,
Scum! That sword is not yours. It belongs to me, as it belonged to my father.
Battering withdrew the sword point. He sat back, shaking his head slowly in amazement at the boldness of the creature in front of him.
Well, well, you're not short of nerve, mouse. What's your name?
The answer was loud and fearless.
I am called Martin, son of Luke, the warrior! See the roving river run over hill and dale to a secret forest place, o'er my heart noon veil. Look for me at dawning when the sun's reborn in the silent beauty twixt the night and morn. Wait till the lark ascends and skies are blue, there where the rainbow ends, I will wait for you.
The mousemaid Rose sat quite still as the last tremulous notes of her song hovered on the evening air. From a vantage point in the rocks south of Marshank, she looked out to sea. The water was tinted gold and scarlet from soft cloud layers, reflecting the far westering sun at her back. Below on the shore, an ebbing tide gurgled and chuckled small secrets to itself as it lapped the pebbles.
Oh, Miss Rosa, you come in and get this here supper. I've been to cooking victuals to lay about and get cold and soggy, but no.
Rose's companion, Grum, waved a heavy digging paw at her, and the mousemaid wandered over to join her mole friend at the low fire he had been cooking on. She sniffed appreciatively.
Wild oat cakes and vegetable soup. Good old Grum. You could make a banquet from nothing.
Grum smiled, his dark velvety face crinkling around two bright button eyes. He waved the tiny ladle which he always carried thrust through his belt like a sword.
Huh, and you charming birds out in the tree like in sweet-talking, missy. Set he down and eat up.
Rose accepted the deep scallop shell full of fragrant soup. Placing her oatcake on a flat rock across the fire to keep it warm, she shook her head as she sipped away.
You're worse than an old mousewife, Grum Trencher. I wager you'd rock me to sleep if I let you.
Grum wagged the small ladle at her.
Huh. Oh, you need know your sleep. Imagine what your old dad's saying if an I bought him tired out and starved, huh?
The mousemaid took a hasty bite of oatcake, fanning her mouth.
Whoop, what? There'll be no sleep for us until we found out whether or not Brom is held captive in that dreadful fortress.
Grum wiped his ladle clean with some sedge grass.
Mayhap old Brom just wandered off and got lost. Mayhap he been captured in yon fortress.
Rose shook her head.
You must understand, Grum. The name Brom and the word trouble go together. He was always in trouble with father at home. That's why he went off wandering. You weren't there at the time, but they had a furious argument over Brom just wandering off and roaming as he pleased. Father said it was no way for the son of a chieftain to learn his responsibilities, but Brom wouldn't listen. He ran off alone. Well, we've tracked him this far, Grum, and I'm certain that my brother has run straight into trouble again. That's why I'm sure he's been taken by battering scouts. I hope that he hasn't been forced to tell them where Noonvale is. The whole tribe of Urnvo would be in danger if Brom gave away our location to that filthy tyrant.
Grum refilled Rose's shell with vegetable soup.
Don't ye fret, missy. Old Brome can keep his mouth shutted tighter than a mussel at low tide, huh?
The mousemaid unwound the throwing sling from about her waist.
I hope you're right, Grum. I'd hate to think of the things those vermin would do to a young mouse to get information.
The mole patted Rose's back gently with a heavy digging claw.
Don't ye worry, Rosa. Us'll get old Meister Brome out in yon best hole if him be in there.
When they had finished eating, they extinguished the fire and broke camp. A stiff breeze had sprung out of the east, bringing with it a light spatter of raindrops, which threatened to get heavier as night set in. Scrambling down the rocks, the two friends gained the shore, their paws making soft chinking noises as they trotted through the shingled tide line. Marshank stood grim and forbidding up ahead, a dark hump of misery in the moonless night.